Hey everyone, welcome back to Try Not to Sleep. I'm your host, Ethan Brooks, and as always, we're here with another calm, slightly boring story from history to help you unwind. Tonight, we're diving into the strange and persistent idea that we might actually be living inside a simulation, and how some people say the clues are all around us, if you just know where to look. All right, get comfortable, and let's see how far you make it before you fall asleep. Here's the thing. Most people assume the simulation idea popped up with sci-fi movies or late-night Reddit threads, but the roots go way deeper. Back in 2003, Oxford philosopher Nick Bostrom dropped a bombshell paper. He argued that if future civilizations can simulate universes, odds are high we're living in one. So, the mainstream view? Simulation theory is just a thought experiment. Philosophers love it. Physicists mostly roll their eyes. Except, this idea keeps creeping into real science. Take Max Tegmark, an eminent cosmologist. He points out that our universe runs on strict mathematical rules, almost like code. Fibonacci, spirals in sunflowers, the golden ratio in seashells, even the structure of DNA. These patterns show up everywhere. But is that just nature being efficient? Or something more? Now, here's where things get weird. Some people say the universe's laws look suspiciously like programming shortcuts. Why do photons and electrons follow strict, simple rules? Why does the cosmos seem optimized for computation? Then there's the glitch in the matrix stuff. Déjà vu. The Mandela effect. Even quantum particles acting differently when observed. These all get lumped in as possible hints. But hold that thought. The strongest mainstream objection? Simulation theory can't be tested, so it's not science, just philosophy in a lab coat. Fair point. Even Dr. Mikio Kaku, theoretical physicist, says simulating a universe is way beyond our tech, maybe even impossible. But that doesn't explain why the universe sometimes acts like it's hiding its source code. And here is a credibility anchor. John Wheeler's delayed choice experiment. Princeton, 1978. Photons seem to decide their past based on present observation. That's not just weird. It's a direct challenge to how we think reality works. So, if the universe is a simulation, who or what is running it? And if it's not, why does reality keep acting like it's being watched? Here's where things split. Philosophers say simulation theory is a mind bender, a way to poke holes in what we think we know. But physicists, most of them want hard evidence, not hypotheticals. So, where does that leave us? On one side, you have thinkers like Bostrom, who argue it's all about probability. If advanced civilizations can run perfect simulations, and they run billions of them, the math says we're almost certainly inside one. But physicists like Neil deGrasse Tyson give it a coin flip at best. He's on record saying it's a 50-50 shot. Possible, but not proven. Now, here's the anomaly. Physical laws often look like code. So precise, so repeatable, that some researchers, like Max Tegmark at NE, wonder if math is the real foundation of everything. It's almost too neat. Except there's pushback. Mainstream science says math just describes nature. The Fibonacci sequence in pine cones. That's just evolution finding efficient patterns, not a programmer's signature. But then you get quantum weirdness. Take the double-slit experiment. fire electrons through two slits, and they make an interference pattern. Unless you look. When observed, they act like particles, not waves. It's as if the universe only renders detail when someone's watching. That's not just theory. It's documented in labs worldwide. So, is this a sign of a simulation optimizing resources? The way a video game only loads what's in view? Or is it just how quantum mechanics works? No simulation required. Here's a reality check. Skeptics argue the simulation idea is just modern religion, an unfalsifiable belief system. And to be fair, there's no experiment that can prove we're in a simulation. But quantum experiments like Wheeler's delayed choice keep raising eyebrows because they don't fit neatly into any box. So, is the universe's code just an illusion? Or are we missing a clue hiding in plain sight? One that could explain why the universe seems so eerily tuned for life. Here's what keeps bugging scientists and philosophers alike. Why does the universe look like it's running on rules? Almost like software. Everywhere you look, there's math hiding in plain sight. The orbits of planets follow precise equations. The speed of light is a hard limit. Even the way galaxies cluster seems to obey a kind of cosmic algorithm. But is that just nature being predictable? Or is there something deeper? Mainstream science says, don't get carried away. The universe isn't designed. It just happens to follow patterns, because that's how physics shakes out. Math is our way of describing it, not proof of a hidden program. Except the patterns go further than most people realize. DNA is built from just 4 chemical letters, but those letters arrange themselves in ways that echo mathematical sequences. The Fibonacci spiral shows up in sunflowers, hurricanes, and even the arms of galaxies. It's almost like someone or something prefers efficiency. Now, some researchers, like Max Tegmark, admit, take this seriously. He argues that if reality is fundamentally mathematical, maybe it's not just described by math. Maybe it is math. That's a big leap, but then you hit the quantum wall. Look at John Wheeler's delayed choice experiment. When scientists observe a photon, it decides how to behave, even if that decision seems to reach back in time. It's as if the universe waits for input before committing to an outcome. That sounds a lot like code responding to a user. But hold on. The strongest objection? Critics say these patterns are just coincidences, and that humans are wired to find order, even when it isn't there. And fair enough, our brains love to connect dots. Still, that doesn't explain why the rules are so universal, or why the math works everywhere, every time. So, is the cosmos really running on code? Or is our search for patterns just a glitch in our own programming? And if it is code, who wrote it? Let's zoom in on one of the strangest glitches people talk about. The Mandela effect. You've heard it before. People remember Nelson Mandela dying in prison in the 1980s. Except he didn't. He lived until 2013. So what's going on here? The mainstream answer is simple. Human memory is unreliable. We mix things up, share false memories, and suddenly millions of people remember something that never happened. But then it gets weirder. It's not just Mandela, the Berenstain Bears. Some swear it was always spelled Berenstain, Darth Vader, Luke, I am your father. Except that's not the actual line. So why do so many people remember the same wrong details? Some say it's just collective confusion, but others wonder if these are echoes, tiny glitches, like a simulation updating itself, and our memories not quite syncing up. Now, here's where the alternative theory kicks in. If reality is code, maybe these moments are patches, corrections to the simulation that leave behind memory residue, like when a video game updates, and some players notice things are suddenly different. Except there's no hard evidence, no logs, no error messages, just a lot of people scratching their heads. But the phenomenon is documented. Psychologists have studied these mass memory mismatches. 2010s, University of Chicago, Dr. Julia Shaw. She found that false memories are easy to implant, and groups can reinforce them. Still, the scale of the Mandela effect keeps some folks suspicious. Reality check. The strongest objection is that our brains are just bad at remembering details, especially when we share story. And that's true. Memory is famously unreliable. But if it's only bad memory, why do so many people misremember the exact same things in the exact same way? So, are these glitches just mind tricks? Or is something deeper rewriting our reality? And if the simulation is editing itself, what else might be changing right under our noses? Let's get specific. Why do so many people swear the Berenstain Bears or the Berenstein Bears? And why do millions remember Darth Vader saying, "Luke, I am your father," when the actual line is, "No, I am your father"? It's not just one or two folks mishearing things. Entire generations have these memories burned in. But the books have always said Berenstain. The movie script never had Luke in that line. So, what gives? Mainstream psychology says this is classic false memory. The brain fills in gaps, especially when names sound more familiar. Stein is a common ending. Stain isn't. And in pop culture, lines get twisted until they overwrite the original. Except the numbers are wild. Polls and social media threads show thousands, sometimes millions, confidently remembering the wrong version. It's just one-off confusion. It's coordinated, widespread, and persistent. Then there's the alternative explanation. Some theorists claim these are resets in a simulation. When the program updates, some details get rewritten, but the old data lingers in our heads. It's like a video game patch that changes a map, but players still remember the old layout. Now watch what happens when you look for hard proof. You'll find vintage books, old VHS tapes, and movie scripts. All of them match the official version. No evidence of a switch. No physical trace of the Berenstein universe or the Luke line. But the memories don't go away. Here's a credibility anchor. Dr. Elizabeth Loftus, cognitive psychologist, University of California, Irvine, has shown in studies since the 1970s that false memories can be created in groups. The Mandela effect, she says, fits perfectly with what we know about memory errors. Reality check. Critics argue that collective memory is just bad at details, especially with pop culture. And they're right. Misremembering is common. But if it's all just bad memory, why do these specific errors show up everywhere at the same time in so many people? So, is this just a glitch in our brains? Or are we bumping into the boundaries of something bigger? And if reality can be patched, What happens when we notice the update? Here's where things start to feel genuinely strange. We're not just talking about fuzzy childhood memories or movie quotes. People all over the world report moments that feel like the universe is off, like the simulation just hiccuped. Ever had déjà vu so strong it felt like you were reliving a scene? Or noticed streetlights flickering only when you walk by, clocks skipping seconds, or time seeming to slow down during an accident? These aren't just quirks. For some, they're evidence of glitches in the matrix. But hold that thought. Mainstream science says déjà vu is just a brain misfire. Neurons getting their wires crossed, creating the illusion of repetition. Time distortions? That's adrenaline and memory playing tricks. Except the stories pile up. People share identical experiences. Seeing the same stranger twice in one day, hearing a word on TV right as they say it out loud, or objects vanishing and reappearing in impossible places. The odds of these lining up by chance? Tiny. So, what's the alternative? Some theorists claim these are moments when the simulation lags, resets, or renders new information. Like a video game, reality only loads what you're paying attention to. When you catch it off guard, you see the seams. But is there any hard evidence? Here's a credibility anchor. In 2016, Dr. Joel Pearson at the University of New South Wales ran brain scans during déjà vu episodes. The results? The brain lights up in memory and decision areas, but no clear cause is found. Science can describe the feeling, but not explain why it happens. Reality check. Skeptics argue that all these glitches are just coincidences, brain chemistry, or selective attention. And yes, humans are wired to notice patterns, even when none exist. But if it's all in our heads, why do unrelated people experience the same types of anomalies over and over? So, are we just pattern-hunting animals? Or is reality sometimes showing its cracks? And if glitches are real, what happens when we start looking for them on purpose? Now, watch what happens when we zoom out, from glitches in our own lives to the big cosmic stage. There's this famous equation, the Drake equation. It's supposed to estimate how many intelligent civilizations are out there in our galaxy right now. Plug in the numbers, stars, planets, life, intelligence, technology, and you get a wild result. Over 1 million advanced civilizations should exist in the Milky Way alone. But here's the thing. We see nothing. No signals, no ships, no alien postcards. The universe is silent. That's the Fermi paradox. If the math says the galaxy should be teeming with life, where's everybody? Mainstream science offers a few answers. Maybe life is rare, or civilizations destroy themselves before they can reach out. Maybe we're just early, or maybe the distances are too vast for anyone to notice us. Except, some theorists see this as a clue. If the universe is a simulation, maybe it's only rendering what we need to see. Galaxies, stars, even other civilizations. What if they're just background assets? Projections, not real unless we look closely. It sounds out there, but Max Tegmark at MIT and Nick Bostrom at Oxford have both pointed out, if a simulation wants to save computing power, it would only simulate the observers and their immediate environment. So, maybe we're alone because the simulation is focused on us. But that raises a new problem. If the simulation is hiding the rest of the universe, how would we ever know? What would happen if we built a telescope powerful enough to see something unexpected? Would the simulation fill in the details on demand? Here's a reality check. Critics argue that the silence is just bad luck or bad assumptions in the Drake equation. And sure, maybe we're missing something basic about life or technology. But the total absence of evidence, despite decades of searching, keeps the question alive. So, is the universe empty because we're truly alone? Or because it's programmed that way? And if the simulation only renders what we look for, what happens if we finally catch it in the act? Here's something that's hard to ignore. Everywhere we look, nature is obsessed with math. Sunflowers pack their seeds in spirals that follow the Fibonacci sequence. Pine cones, hurricanes, even the way galaxies swirl. Same thing. But why? Mainstream science says it's just efficiency. These patterns help plants maximize sunlight, pack seeds tightly, or move fluids with the least energy. Except the math goes deeper. The golden ratio pops up in seashells, flower petals, and even the proportions of the human body. DNA twists in a double helix that matches these same ratios. So, is nature just good at math? Or is something else going on? Some theorists argue these patterns are more than coincidence. They're evidence of underlying code. Like a fractal, the same rules repeat at every scale, from atoms to galaxies. It's almost like someone programmed the universe to run on math. But hold that thought. If the universe is a simulation, repeating patterns would make sense. Code is efficient. Programmers reuse the same functions to save resources. Why invent new rules when old ones work everywhere? Here's a credibility anchor. Max Tegmark, mid-cosmologist, has argued that reality might not just be described by math, but actually be math. To him, the universe is a giant mathematical object. Now, reality check. The strongest objection? Critics say we only notice these patterns because humans are wired to find order, even where none exists. And that's true. Our brains love patterns. But that doesn't explain why the same equations work for sunflowers, hurricanes, and spiral galaxies. So, is this just a case of selective attention? Or are we seeing the fingerprints of a cosmic programmer? And if the universe is built on math, does it ever break its own rules? Or is there a hidden pattern we haven't spotted yet? So, does nature follow math because it has to, or because it's programmed to? Let's dig into the most famous example, the Fibonacci sequence. You see it everywhere. Pine cones, pineapples, sunflower seeds, nautilus shells. Each number in the sequence is the sum of the two before it. 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, so on. The spiral it creates shows up in places you'd never expect. But why would plants and animals care about a math pattern dreamed up by an Italian guy in the 1200s? Mainstream biology says it's just evolution at work. Fibonacci spirals help pack seeds efficiently, expose leaves to sunlight, or distribute petals for pollinators. It's survival, not magic. Except the match is almost too perfect. The ratio between Fibonacci numbers, the golden ratio, shows up in hurricanes, galaxies, even the cochlea of your inner ear. It's everywhere, across scales and species. So, is this just a coincidence? Some theorists argue it's not. If the universe is running on code, reusing efficient algorithms would make sense. Why invent new math for every plant when one formula works for all? Here's where it gets strange. Even in places where there's no obvious evolutionary advantage, the pattern still appears. Some crystals grow in Fibonacci spirals. Certain animal horns curl in golden ratio arcs. It's almost like the universe has a favorite shortcut. But hold that thought. Reality check. The strongest objection is that humans are just good at spotting patterns, even when they're not meaningful. And that's true. Confirmation bias is real. But the sheer number of examples and their mathematical precision is hard to brush off as pure chance. So, is Fibonacci just nature's best trick? Or is it a signature left by whoever, or whatever, wrote the rules? And if it's a signature, what happens if we finally decode the rest of the message? If there's a signature in nature's math, what about the code running underneath it all? Now, watch what happens when you zoom in, way in, down to the level of atoms and particles. Mainstream physics says everything is made of quantum waves. Electrons, photons, even the stuff inside protons, they all act like waves until you try to measure them. But here's the catch. When you observe a quantum particle, it chooses a state. Before that, it exists in a cloud of probabilities, a wave function. But the instant you check, it snaps into a single outcome. So, is reality waiting for us to look before it decides what's real? That's the double-slit experiment in a nutshell. Fire electrons through two slits, and you get a wave pattern, unless you measure which slit they go through. Then, the pattern disappears, and you get two stripes. It's almost like the universe only renders detail when someone's watching. But it gets even weirder. John Wheeler's delayed choice experiment, Princeton, 1978, pushed this idea to the limit. He showed that a photon's past behavior can be changed by a measurement made after it's already traveled millions of years. So, does observation reach back in time? Or is the universe updating itself on the fly? Some theorists say this is a dead giveaway for a simulated reality. In a video game, the world only loads when you're nearby. Maybe the universe does the same, saving resources by only collapsing reality when there's an observer. Except mainstream physicists say it's just quantum mechanics being strange. The math works, even if the logic doesn't. Now, reality check. The strongest objection. Simulation theory doesn't actually explain quantum weirdness. It just replaces one mystery with another. And that's fair. But it does line up with how information is handled in every computer system we've ever built. So, are we seeing the universe's true nature? Or just our own limits as observers? And if reality is observer-dependent? What happens if we find a way to observe everything at once? Now here's where things really start to bend your brain. What if particles don't just wait for us to look? They actually rewrite their own history based on what we do. That's not science fiction. That's the delayed choice experiment in action. Physicist John Wheeler set up a scenario where a photon has to decide if it's a particle or a wave. But the twist, the choice to observe it, is made after the photon has already passed the decision point. So, the photon's past isn't set until we check. That means our observation in the present seems to reach back and change what happened millions of years ago. It's like opening a book and finding the ending has changed because you decided to read it. But that can't be, right? Mainstream physics says quantum mechanics is just weird like that. The equations work, even if the logic doesn't. The universe isn't actually rewriting history. It just looks that way because of how probabilities collapse. Except, the alternative explanation is hard to ignore. If the universe is a simulation, maybe it's updating the data retroactively, like a computer game that only renders the past when you decide to look at it. The code fills in the details on demand. That's not just speculation. Wheeler's experiment is documented, Princeton 1978, and repeated in labs worldwide. So, are we seeing quantum magic, or a system optimizing its resources? Now, reality check. The strongest objection. Retrocausality is just a mathematical artifact. No information actually travels backward in time. And that's true, according to the math. But it still leaves us with a universe that behaves as if the past is flexible, depending on what we do now. So, if particles can rewrite their own history, what else in reality is up for grabs? And if the universe updates its story every time we look, could there be secrets hiding in the gaps we never bothered to check? Here's the twist. What if time isn't as locked in as we think? We're taught the past is fixed, the future unknown. But quantum experiments keep poking holes in that idea. Wheeler's delayed choice isn't the only example. In some labs, physicists have shown that entangled particles can decide their states based on measurements made after the fact. It's as if the universe is waiting to see what we'll do before finalizing its own story. So, does reality have a rewind button? That's the mainstream view. Time only flows forward. The arrow of time points from past to future, thanks to entropy. The universe's tendency to go from order to disorder. Except, quantum mechanics doesn't always play by those rules. At the micro level, the math works just as well forwards as backward. Schrödinger's equation, one of the foundations of quantum theory, doesn't care which way time runs. So maybe the universe is a lot more flexible than we think. Some theorists argue this is a clue. If reality is a simulation, maybe time isn't a river. It's a file that can be edited. The past only gets written when we need it, and the program can patch it on demand. But that's a big leap. Here's something concrete. In 2012, a team at the University of Vienna ran a delayed choice experiment with photons and beam splitters. The results matched Wheeler's predictions. Measuring now seemed to affect what happened before. That's not just odd. It's documented. But hold on. Reality check. Critics say this is just quantum math being weird. No real information travels backward. That's true, and the equations support it. Still, it feels like the universe is keeping its options open until the last possible moment. So, if time can be rewritten at the quantum level, what does that mean for everything else? And if reality only locks in when we check, could there be whole timelines we've never noticed, just waiting for someone to look? So, if reality only snaps into place when we look, what's actually holding the universe together behind the scenes? Mainstream science says it's the laws of physics, gravity, electromagnetism, quantum mechanics. These rules are supposed to be universal and unbreakable. They're the bedrock of everything. But here's the catch. All those laws are written in math. Not just any math. Elegant, efficient, almost suspiciously clean equation. The speed of light isn't just fast. It's a hard-coded limit. Planck's constant, the gravitational constant. These numbers don't drift. They're locked in. It's almost like someone set the dials. Except, every time we dig deeper, we find more code-like behavior. Physical constants aren't just stable, they're fine-tuned. If you change them by even a tiny amount, atoms wouldn't form, stars wouldn't burn, life couldn't exist. It's as if the universe is running on the tightest possible settings. So, what's the alternative? Some theorists, like Nick Bostrom and Max Tegmark, suggest these laws aren't just descriptions. They're instructions. The universe could be a simulation, and these constants are the parameters set by whoever or whatever built the system. And it's not just philosophers. In 2021, a team at the University of Oxford ran simulations showing that only a narrow range of physical laws would allow a universe like ours to even function. The odds of landing on those numbers by chance? Astronomically low. But hold that thought. Reality check. Critics argue that fine-tuning is just an illusion. If the constants were different, maybe some other kind of universe would still work. Just not one with humans. That's a fair point, but it doesn't explain why our universe looks so much like it's been optimized for computation and observation. So, are the laws of physics just the rules of the game, set by a cosmic programmer? And if someone wrote the code, could we ever find a bug? Or even hack the system? But let's hit pause for a second. If the universe is a simulation, how would that even work? Could anyone, or anything, actually run a program this massive? Here is the mainstream view. Simulating an entire universe, down to every atom and photon, would take more computing power than the universe itself contains. Dr. Mikio Kaku calls it not even close to feasible. Even our best supercomputers struggle to simulate a handful of molecules, let alone a galaxy. Except, there's a counterpoint. What if the simulation only renders what's needed when it's needed? Like a video game that loads new scenery as you move forward, not all at once. The universe might be optimized for efficiency, not brute force. So, maybe we don't need infinite computing power, just clever shortcut. Now, some theorists propose that reality is pixelated. Space, time, and energy are quantized, broken into tiny, indivisible chunks. If that's true, the simulation only has to keep track of the smallest units, not every possible detail. But then, why do we never see the seams? Alternative explanations suggest the simulation could use compression, procedural generation, or even lazy loading for reality. Only conscious observers get high-res detail. The rest stays in low-res until someone checks. Here's a credibility anchor. In 2012, the University of Bonn Silas Bean ran simulations of quantum chromodynamics on a lattice, a kind of digital grid. He found that if our universe were simulated, we might spot artifacts, like limits on cosmic ray energies, where the pixels show through. But so far, no one's found a smoking gun. Reality check. Critics argue that even with shortcuts, the computational requirements are still mind-boggling. And they're right. No known technology could pull this off. But if the simulators are advanced enough, maybe their methods are as far beyond us as our computers are beyond an amoeba. So, if the simulation is possible, what would it take to actually catch it in the act? And if we ever did, would we even recognize the bug, or would it just look like another law of physics? Here's a thought that sounds wild at first. What if galaxies aren't really out there at all? Some theorists suggest they're just digital projections, rendered for our benefit, like background scenery in a video game. But that's not how we're taught to think about the cosmos. Mainstream science says galaxies are massive collections of stars, dust, and dark matter, billions of them stretching across the observable universe. each one real, physical, and ancient. Except there's a catch. Most of what we see is actually invisible. Dark matter makes up most of a galaxy's mass, but we can't detect it directly. We only know it's there because of its gravitational pull. So, what if we're only seeing what the simulation wants us to see? Here's where the anomaly kicks in. When we look at distant galaxies, we're really looking back in time. Sometimes billions of years. But the farther we look, the fuzzier things get. At the edge of the observable universe, galaxies blur into noise, and the cosmic microwave background becomes a uniform glow. It's almost like the resolution drops off. Some simulation theorists argue this is a clue. If the universe is digital, maybe it only renders distant objects in low detail, saving processing power for what's close to us. Now Max Tegmark at MIT has pointed out that if reality is fundamentally mathematical, then the realness of distant galaxies might just be an illusion. Math describing potential, not actual objects. But is that just wishful thinking? Reality check. Critics say the low-res effect is just a limitation of our telescopes, not a sign of digital rendering. And that's fair. Technology always hits a wall. But if the universe really is a simulation, wouldn't we expect to find some kind of rendering limit? So, if galaxies are just projections, what happens if we build a telescope sharp enough to see the pixel? And if we ever spot a glitch in the cosmic background, would that finally prove the universe is running on code? Or just open up a deeper mystery? Here's the real kicker. Even if we spot a flaw in the cosmic wallpaper, that doesn't answer the biggest question of all. Where is everybody? The universe should be packed with light. The Drake equation says there could be millions of advanced civilizations in our galaxy alone. We've got billions of stars, even more planets, and plenty of cosmic real estate. But it's silent out there. No signals, no probes, no obvious megastructures. Just a vast, empty stage. This is the Fermi paradox in a nutshell. The math says we should be surrounded by neighbors, but all we get is static. So, what gives? Mainstream science offers a few explanations. Maybe intelligent life is rare, or maybe civilizations self-destruct before they can reach out. Some think the distances are just too vast for any practical communication, except the numbers still don't add up. Radio telescopes have scanned the sky for decades. We've listened, watched, and probed every frequency we can think of. Still nothing. So here's the alternative. What if the simulation is designed to keep us isolated? If galaxies are just projections, maybe other civilizations are too. The program could be rendering only what's relevant to us. No need to simulate millions of alien societies if we're never going to meet them. It sounds like sci-fi, but Max Tegmark and Nick Bostrom have both pointed out. If you want to save on computing power, you only simulate the observers and their immediate environment. But that raises a chilling possibility. What if the silent majority of the cosmos isn't silent at all? It's just not rendered for us. Here's a credibility anchor. The SETI Institute has been searching for extraterrestrial signals since the 1960s. They've found nothing but cosmic background noise. Reality check. Critics argue the silence is just a sign we're looking in the wrong way or at the wrong time. And sure, the universe is big, and our search methods are limited. But after decades of silence, the simulation explanation starts to sound less far-fetched. So, are we truly alone, or just alone in our own rendered corner? And if the simulation ever decides to render someone else, would we even notice the change? Here's a wild thought. What if the act of looking up at the night sky is shaping what's actually out there? We already know that in quantum physics, observation changes reality. But could that principle scale up, way up, to the entire cosmos? Mainstream science says, no. Well, the universe is out there, ticking along, whether we're watching or not. Except, quantum experiments keep throwing curveballs. When we observe a particle, it chooses a state. The double-slit experiment, Wheeler's delayed choice, even entanglement, all suggest that reality isn't fully real until someone checks. But what if this isn't just a quantum quirk? Some theorists argue that the universe only renders detail when it's observed. Galaxies, distant stars, maybe even entire civilizations. None of it exists in high-res until someone's looking. It's a bold claim. Now, think about this. Astronomers recently used telescopes to observe light from galaxies over 100 million light-years away. According to quantum theory, their active observation could influence how those photons behaved retroactively. So, did the past lock in only when we look? Here's the alternative explanation. If we're in a simulation, the program only fills in the details when we demand them. Observation isn't passive. It's a cosmic request for more data. But how would we ever know? Here's a credibility anchor. John Wheeler, the Princeton physicist behind the delayed choice experiment, actually asked if the universe is a participatory system, one that requires observers to bring it into being. Now, reality check. Critics say this is just quantum weirdness, not evidence for a simulation. And that's fair. No one's shown that looking through a telescope can actually change the universe on a cosmic scale. But the fact that reality seems to wait for us to check is hard to ignore. So, are we quietly shaping the cosmos every time we look up? And if observation really is cosmic influence, what happens if we stop watching? Here's where things get even stranger. If observation can shape reality, what about when we look at something unimaginably far away? Like a galaxy 100 million light-years from Earth. According to quantum physics, the very act of measuring a photon from that distant galaxy could, in theory, decide what that photon was doing all those years ago. It's not just the present we're influencing, it's the past. That's retrocausality. But wait, how can a choice made today ripple backward through time, all the way across the universe? Mainstream science says it's just quantum mechanics being weird. The equations allow for these delayed choice effects, but most physicists argue it's all math, not magic. Except experiments keep pushing the boundaries. John Wheeler's delayed choice experiment and its modern versions show that photons seem to decide their state after the fact. Sometimes after traveling for millions of years. It's as if the universe is holding its breath, waiting for us to make up our minds. So, what's the alternative? If the universe is a simulation, maybe the program only fills in the details when we finally ask for them. The past isn't set in stone. It's a variable, waiting for input. That's not just speculation. These experiments are documented. In 2007, Australian physicists used cosmic photons from distant quasars to test quantum entanglement, essentially letting the universe itself choose the settings. The results? Still weird. But here's the thing. If observation can reach back in time, what does that say about cause and effect? Are we participants in a universe that's still under construction? Reality check. Critics argue that retrocausality is just a quirk of quantum math. No real information travels backward, and nothing physical changes in the past. And that's true as far as we know, but it doesn't explain why the universe keeps acting like it's waiting for us to notice it. So, could our observations today be shaping the universe's history? And if the past is still editable, what happens if we start looking for changes that shouldn't be possible? Here's where the story takes a sharp turn. We're not just talking about weird memories or déjà vu anymore. Now we're asking if our choices today can actually rewrite cosmic history. That sounds impossible. But the delayed choice experiment says, not so fast. John Wheeler's setup is deceptively simple. Fire a photon toward a pair of slits, then decide at the last possible moment whether to check which slit it went through. If you check, the photon acts like a particle. If you don't, it acts like a wave. But here's the kicker. The decision happens after the photon has already passed the slits. So, did the photon know what you'd do? Or did your choice ripple backward in time, changing what happened a few microseconds ago? Now, scale that up. In some versions, photons have traveled for millions of years before hitting the detector. The experimenters only decide how to measure them at the last instant. Yet the photon's past seems to line up with the present choice. That's not just strange. It's a direct challenge to cause and effect. If the universe is a simulation, maybe this is a clue. The system waits for input before rendering the final version of reality. Even if that means editing the past to match your observation. But if that's true, could we ever catch the simulation in the act of rewriting history? Here's a credibility anchor. In 2007, Anton Zeilinger's team in Vienna ran delayed choice experiments using cosmic photons from distant quasars as random number generators. The results matched quantum predictions. No matter how far back you go, the effect holds. So, reality seems to play along, no matter how late you make your choice. But reality check. Critics argue that this is just quantum math doing its thing. No real information travels backward, and the universe isn't actually rewriting itself. That's a solid objection, but it doesn't explain why the outcome depends on a decision made after the fact. So, if photons' pasts are up for grabs, what else in the universe is still undecided? And if we keep pushing the boundaries, could we find a moment where the simulation slips and history actually changes before our eyes? If the past can be rewritten at the quantum level, what stops the simulation from editing bigger things? Or does it already? Let's talk about efficiency. Every computer system has limits. Even the most advanced simulation would need to cut corners, skip details, compress data, or render only what's absolutely necessary. But the universe seems limitless. Infinite stars, endless galaxies, mind-boggling complexity everywhere you look. Except look closer. There are hints that reality doesn't always go full resolution. The cosmic microwave background is almost perfectly smooth, except for tiny, predictable fluctuations. Distant galaxies blur into noise as we push the limits of our telescopes. So, is the universe saving processing power by lowering the detail where it doesn't matter? That's what some simulation theorists argue. Just like a video game only loads the part of the world you're exploring. Maybe the cosmos only renders high-res reality where conscious observers are present. It's a clever idea, but it raises a problem. If the simulation is optimizing for efficiency, there should be glitches, places where the seams show or where details don't add up. Maybe that's déjà vu, or the Mandela effect, or those moments when reality just seems off. Now, here's a credibility anchor. Silas Bean at the University of Bonn ran lattice simulations of quantum physics in 2012. He predicted that if our universe is digital, we might spot pixel artifacts in the energy of cosmic rays. But so far, no one's found a clear digital fingerprint. Reality check. The strongest objection is that the universe's smoothness is just a product of physics, not programming. And that's a fair point. Nature can be efficient without being artificial. Still, the fact that reality seems to economize detail where no one's looking keeps the simulation question alive. So, where are the real limits? Is there a cosmic resolution we just haven't hit yet? And what happens if we finally push the simulation past its breaking point? Imagine pushing your telescope to the absolute limit, expecting to see the edge of everything, but instead finding nothing. That's the question at the heart of the simulation theory's biggest gamble. If the universe is rendered on demand, what happens when we try to look past the last loaded pixel? Is there a void out there? An empty space where reality simply hasn't been drawn in yet? Now, mainstream science says there's no such void. The universe is continuous, governed by physics, and if you build a better instrument, you'll just see more. But there's a catch. Every time we peer deeper, whether it's with radio telescopes, particle accelerators, or deep field cameras, we hit a wall. The cosmic microwave background is a perfect example. A smooth, uniform glow that marks the limit of what we can observe. Beyond that, it's just static. So, is this a hard-coded boundary? Some theorists say yes. If the simulation only needs to render what's observable, then anything beyond our reach is left blank, an unrendered void. The universe economizes, saving resources by only filling in what's necessary for the story. But what if we push harder? What if a new technology lets us see past the cosmic background, or detect particles at energies never measured before? Would the simulation scramble to fill in the gaps? Or would we find a glitch, a place where the code just runs out? That's the anomaly. There are already hints, unexplained, cold spots in the cosmic background, quantum fluctuations that don't fit the models, even reports of data that seem to disappear when checked too closely. Here's a credibility anchor. The Planck satellite, launched by the European Space Agency in 2009, mapped the cosmic microwave background in unprecedented detail. It found anomalies, tiny, unexplained voids and cold regions that still puzzle cosmologists. But here's the reality check. Skeptics argue these are just natural statistical flukes or artifacts of our instruments. And that's a solid point. Science is full of noise, and most anomalies vanish with better data. Still, the idea of a cosmic edge keeps coming back, because the universe seems just a little too perfect at hiding its seam. So, what's really out there, past the last pixel? And if we ever find a true void, what will it say about the nature of reality itself? But here's a twist no one saw coming. The deeper we dig into the simulation question, the more it starts to look like an old debate in a new disguise. For some, simulation theory is just high-tech religion. A digital creator swaps places with a traditional god, and the code becomes scripture. But believers in simulation theory often run from anything that smells like faith. They'll tell you, this isn't about gods or spirits. It's about logic, probability, and math. Except the lines blur fast. If an advanced civilization built the simulation, isn't that just a modern version of a creator? If the universe is optimized for us, isn't that a digital echo of intelligent design? So why do so many simulation believers reject religious explanations outright? Some say it's about control. A simulated universe is built by intelligences with motives we might one day understand, or even contact. A divine universe, on the other hand, is ruled by mysteries forever out of reach. But then, the anomalies pile up. People report near-death experiences, prophetic dreams, or moments of uncanny synchronicity. Are these just glitches in the code, or messages from beyond? Is the simulation theory just a way to talk about miracles with a tech vocabulary? Now here's a credibility anchor. Nick Bostrom, Oxford, 2003, made simulation theory famous by framing it as a logical argument. No faith required. But even he admits, if we are simulated, the motives of our creators are as unknowable as any deities. So, is simulation theory really different from religion? Or just the same old mirror with a digital frame? Reality check? The strongest objection is that simulation theory just replaces one untestable belief with another. And that's true. No experiment can prove or disprove a cosmic coder any more than a god. But the urge to explain our place in the universe never goes away, no matter how we dress it up. So, if the simulation is a divine mirror, what does that say about us? And if we ever meet our creators, will they look anything like what we expect? Here's the weird part. Simulation theory sounds like it should be a cousin to religion, but in practice, it's more like a rival. You'd think people who believe in an intelligent creator, digital or divine, would find common ground. Except, that's not how it plays out. Simulation theory fans draw a hard line. They insist it's logic, not faith. Probability, not prayer. But the overlap is hard to ignore. Both ideas ask, who made us? Why are we here? What's the point of all this? Except, sim theory tries to dodge the supernatural. There's no heaven, no hell, just code and creators who might be as flawed as we are. So, why the rejection? Some say it's about evidence. Religion relies on ancient texts and personal experience. Simulation theory leans on equations, computer models, and the quirks of quantum physics. But then you get the anomaly. People have visions, near-death experiences, or moments of déjà vu. Are these spiritual events, or just glitches in the code? Sim believers say it's the latter. No miracles, just bugs. Now, here's the alternative. Maybe simulation theory is just a new language for old mysteries. Instead of angels, we talk about programmer. Instead of fate, we talk about algorithms. But the credibility anchor is Nick Bostrom, Oxford, 2003. He framed simulation theory as a logical argument, not a leap of faith. Yet, even he admits, if we're simulated, the motives of our creators are as mysterious as any gods. Reality check. The strongest objection is that simulation theory is just religion with a tech upgrade, still unstable, still based on belief. And that's fair. But sim theorists argue that at least their creator could, in theory, be discovered or even contacted. So, if sim theory is just a digital mask for faith, are we really any closer to the truth? And if we ever get an answer, will it satisfy either side, or just raise even stranger questions? Here's where things really start to split. If simulation theory is just faith in new packaging, why do people experience reality so differently? Why do some see patterns, glitches, or cosmic hints, while others see only randomness and noise? It's not just about belief. It's about perception. Some people swear the universe is sending them signals, synchronicities, déjà vu, the feeling that everything is connected. For them, life is a puzzle with hidden meaning. But for others, the world is just what it is. Atoms, chance, and chaos. That's the fracture. Two people can witness the same event and walk away with opposite stories. One sees a sign, the other sees coincidence. So, what's really happening? Mainstream psychology says humans are pattern-seeking machines. We're wired to find meaning, even where there is none. That's why we see faces in clouds and animals in the stars. Except sometimes the patterns are too precise to ignore. People report impossible timings, prophetic dreams, or sudden insights that seem to come from nowhere. Are these just brain glitches, or is someone leaving clues? Here's the alternative. Maybe the simulation is personal. The code adapts to each observer, rendering a reality tailored to their expectations, beliefs, and fears. Like a video game with a unique storyline for every player. But can that be tested? Now, here's a credibility anchor. In 2019, researchers at Yale found that people's beliefs about reality actually change how their brains process sensory information. Perception isn't just passive. It's an active construction, shaped by what we expect to see. Reality check. The strongest objection is that this is all psychology, not physics. Our brains trick us, but the universe doesn't care. Fair point. But if perception shapes reality at the quantum level, maybe the line between mind and matter isn't so clean. So, are we all living in the same world? Or does each mind get its own custom feed? And if reality fractures along the lines of belief, what happens when those fractures collide? Here's where things get tangled. If reality is a simulation, then someone or something had to write the code. But who? And why? Mainstream thinkers say, if there's a creator, it's probably an advanced civilization. Maybe future humans running ancestor simulations. Maybe aliens, or even artificial superintelligence. But that just pushes the mystery up a level. If we're simulated, what about our creators? Are they simulated too? Is there an endless stack of realities, each one coded by the one above? Now, here's the anomaly. Some people report encounters, visions, messages, or even abduction stories that feel like contact with the other side. Are these just dreams? Or is the simulation leaking hints about its true architects? Except every culture interprets these experiences differently. Some see angels, others see aliens, some just see noise. So, if the sim has a creator, Why all the mixed signals? One alternative is that the simulation is designed to be ambiguous. Maybe the creators want us to wonder, but never know for sure. Like a puzzle with no final answer. Then there's the question of motive. Are we an experiment, entertainment, a lesson, or just a byproduct of some cosmic research project? Here's a credibility anchor. Nick Bostrom, Oxford, 2003, argued that if advanced civilizations run ancestor simulations, the number of simulated minds could vastly outnumber real ones. Statistically, we're more likely to be sims than originals. But if that's true, why don't we see clear evidence, messages in the code, or direct contact from the creators? Reality check. The strongest objection is that there's zero proof of a creator. No footprints, no fingerprints, just speculation. And that's fair. If a creator exists, they're either hiding on purpose, or their motives are beyond our understanding. So, if the Sims creator is out there, what do they want from us? And if we ever break through the simulation's firewall, will we like what we find on the other side? Let's pull on that thread. If there's a simulation, why does it seem so obsessed with us? Here's the thing. When you look at the universe, it's hard not to notice how much of it is tuned for life, especially human life. The laws of physics, the constants, even the timing of cosmic events, they all line up just right for us to exist. But that's not what you'd expect from a random universe. The mainstream view says it's just the anthropic principle. We're here because the universe allows us to be here. If it didn't, we wouldn't be around to ask questions. Except that explanation feels like a dodge. Why do the odds stack up so perfectly? Why does the universe seem to care if we're watching? Now, here's the anomaly. When we look for signs of life elsewhere, we find nothing. The Fermi paradox hangs over everything. If there should be millions of civilizations, why is it so quiet? Why does everything seem to revolve around our little corner of the cosmos? Some theorists say that's exactly the point. Maybe the simulation only needs to focus on us, just enough detail to keep the story going. Like a video game that only loads the map around the player. The rest can be low-res or even blank. So, are we the main characters, or just the only ones rendered in high definition? It's a wild idea, but it fits the data. Nick Bostrom, Oxford, 2003, argued that ancestor simulations would likely focus on conscious observers. There's no need to waste resources simulating empty galaxies or civilizations we'll never meet. But that raises another question. If the simulation is centered on us, does that mean our actions matter more than we think? Are we being watched, tested, or just entertained? Reality check. The strongest objection is that this is pure solipsism, just human ego dressed up in code. And that's fair. But the universe's eerie focus on observation, consciousness, and life keeps the debate alive. So, if the simulation really is all about us, what happens if we try to break out of our bubble? And if we ever do, will we find a bigger world? Or just another layer of the same old code? Here's where the mystery deepens. If the simulation is built just for us, then who, or what, wrote the original code? And where did that first spark come from? Mainstream science says the universe began with the Big Bang, an explosion of space, time, and energy from a single point. Everything, including the laws of physics, burst into existence in that instant. But that's just the start of the puzzle. The Big Bang explains what happened next, but not what came before. What caused the bang? Why did the laws of physics take the form they did? And why does math seem to be baked into the fabric of reality itself? Now, here's the anomaly. The universe doesn't just exist. It runs on a set of rules that are elegant, efficient, and frankly, suspiciously well ordered. Constants like the speed of light or Planck's constant aren't random. They're precise, as if chosen from a menu. It's almost like someone, or something, set the dials. So, if the universe is code, who coded the coder? Some theorists suggest we're in an infinite regress. A simulation inside a simulation with no original creator. Others think there must be a prime mover. A reality outside all the layers of code, where the first programmer set everything in motion. But then, what would that reality look like? Here's a credibility anchor. Max Tegmark has argued that the universe is not just described by math, it is math. To him, the original code is the ultimate mathematical structure, existing outside time and space. Except that just pushes the question back another step. If everything is math, why does math exist at all? Who or what wrote the very first equation? Reality check. The strongest objection is that these questions are unanswerable. Philosophical dead ends, dressed up as science. And it's true, we may never know what came before, the universe or outside the simulation. But the fact that the universe behaves like code keeps the question alive. So, if we ever do break out of our bubble, will we find the ultimate source? Or just another layer with even stranger rules? And if there is an original code, is it possible to hack it? Or are we forever locked inside someone else's program? Here's the twist that keeps everyone up at night. If we ever do find a way out, if the simulation cracks or the code is exposed, what's waiting for us on the other side? Is there an ultimate source, or just another level with new rules and new mystery? But the deeper you go, the stranger it gets. Every time we think we've hit bedrock, reality throws up another floor beneath our feet. So, is there ever a true outside? Mainstream science says we're nowhere near answering that. The Big Bang is as far back as we can see, and the laws of physics are the only rules we know. Everything else is speculation. Except the anomalies keep piling up. Quantum particles that refuse to pick a state until we look. Constants that seem chosen, not random. A universe that feels fine-tuned for observers, but silent about what's beyond. Some theorists argue that if we're in a simulation, the outside might be fundamentally unknowable, like a fish trying to imagine dry land. If we hack the code, maybe all we find is more code, deeper and stranger than before. But there's another possibility. Maybe the act of searching itself changes the program. If observation collapses reality, could curiosity itself be the key to opening new doors? Now, here's a credibility anchor. In 2017, the Max Planck Institute published work showing that the act of measurement in quantum systems doesn't just reveal information, it can actually create it. The universe, it seems, responds to questions with new answers. But that leads to the final echo. What if every answer just spawns another question? What if there's no final layer, just an infinite recursion? Code within code, mystery within mystery. Reality check. The strongest objection is that this is all just philosophy in a lab coat. No experiment can reach outside the universe. No test can touch the real sort. And that's true, at least for now. But at every time we push the limits, reality seems to push back, just out of reach. So, are we chasing shadows? Or is the universe daring us to keep asking? And if the final question has no answer, what does that say about the story we're living in? Here's where things get uncomfortable. If the universe is a puzzle with no solution, what does that do to our sense of purpose? Are we just characters in a story that loops forever? Or is there a deeper truth hiding in the code? Mainstream science says reality is what we can measure. If it can't be tested, it doesn't count. But the more we measure, the more reality seems to slip through our fingers. Quantum experiments refuse to settle down. Constants look suspiciously chosen. The universe keeps acting like it's optimized for consciousness, but never admits who or did the optimizing. So, what if the truth is that we're living in a simulation, and the story is written to keep us asking questions? It's a wild idea, but it fits the evidence. The alternative is that the universe is just weird by nature. No code, no programmer. Just chaos that happens to look like order from our perspective. Except there's always a new anomaly. Every time scientists close the book on one mystery, another pops up. The double-slit experiment, the fine-tuned constants, the eerie silence of the cosmos. Each one hints at something more, but never quite delivers the answer. Now, here's the credibility anchor. Max Tegmark at MIT and Nick Bostrom at Oxford have both argued that the simulation hypothesis is just as logical as any other explanation. Maybe more so given the math. But the story never ends. Reality check. The strongest objection is that simulation theory can't be proven or disproven. And that's fair. It's philosophy dressed as science. But then, why does the universe keep acting like it's hiding something? Just out of reach. So, are we stuck in an endless loop of questions because that's the way the simulation is designed? Or is there a final truth waiting for someone bold enough to break the pattern? And if so, what would it even look like? So, what actually happens if someone breaks the pattern? What's waiting for us outside the boundaries of the simulation? If there even is an outside? Most people assume there's nothing beyond. If the universe is a program, then everything we know, space, time, matter, is just data. Shut off the simulation, and it's lights out. End of story. But that's just the mainstream guess. There's an anomaly here. Stories of people experiencing things that don't fit the rules. Near-death experiences, out-of-body journeys, and those moments when reality seems to peel back, just for a second. Are these bugs or hints at a bigger reality? Some say these are just brain chemistry, but I does wonder if they're glimpses beyond the code. So, what's the alternative? Maybe the simulation is a sandbox, one layer in a stack of realities. If you break out, you don't find nothing. You find the next level up. Maybe a truer world or another simulation, or something so alien we can't even imagine it. But here's the credibility anchor. In 2017, Oxford's Nick Bostrom argued that if simulations are possible, there could be countless layers, each one simulating the one below. That means outside might just be another simulation, running on even stranger rules. Except there's a catch. No one's ever brought back proof. No artifact, no message, No clear evidence that anyone's glimpsed the real world behind the curtain. Hold that thought. What if the final truth isn't a place, but a shift in perspective? Maybe breaking the pattern means realizing you're the observer, not just the observed. Maybe the real escape isn't physical, it's awareness. But reality check. Skeptics argue this is just wishful thinking. There's no evidence of an outside, and no way to test for one. Fair point. But that's exactly what you'd expect if the simulation is airtight. So, if there is something beyond, what would it take to reach it? And if someone ever does, will the rest of us even know it happened? Or will the simulation just quietly reset, and the questions start all over again?